Breaking Kayfabe with Bowdren and Barry. An island unto ourselves is the way Barry Rose described this podcast, yet still a member. Oh, and I'm going to say it now, Barry, because I forgot it last week. Sweet Lou having to do the cleanup at the end of the show. Breaking Kayfabe with Bowdren and Barry, a production of the Arcadian Vanguard Podcast Network. Boom! Got that out of the way for you there, Mr. Kipilman. Barry, how you doing today?
Oh, boy, I'm doing great, too. And that it's good because now we've got the last 5 seconds of the show that we can just fuck around, which is great. We got more time to fuck around now. So
time
good.
for more mental masturbation, which I think is the first time we've ever used the term mental masturbation. So on this episode of Breaking Kayfabe with Bowdren and Barry, a couple of interesting nuggets for you, the listeners. Today, we will be looking at the life and legacy of, Barry, we're going to have some people in our group that are going to be extremely excited as we're going to be looking at the Undertaker. I don't think we've never done an Undertaker match, have we?
No, I don't think we ever have.
Yeah, okay, so we are going to May 11th, 1997, Richmond, Virginia. It is Stone Cold Steve Austin, white hot at the time, Bear, taking on the Undertaker in your house from Richmond. And we're going to be talking about that. We got the Hart Foundation sitting at ringside. They make things lots of fun. Besides that, we are going to be looking at the movie. As suggested, I believe in the group, someone suggested that we take a look at the movie Dazed and Confused. And that's, I had a chance to watch that with my wife the other night. Probably about the 15th time I've seen that movie. And it's like one of those things, I have to tell you, I love a movie that I've seen that many times that each time I see it, I pick up some little nuance or some little subplot that I hadn't noticed the 14 other times I've seen the movie. And I'll be discussing that. We're going to also discuss the movie that has finally debuted on the Showtime network. That is the John Belushi documentary. I'm going to be talking about that with Barry. And let's see what else, Barry. Oh, yeah, top 5 list tonight, folks. We're going to be talking top 5 movie franchises of all time. Now, in order for it to be, let me set the ground rules here. In order for it to be a movie franchise, we have to have a minimum of 3 films in a movie series. So, if you got one of these 1 or 2 shot movies, that's not considered a franchise. We want a movie franchise that has at least 3 films in it. So Barry and I will be each offering our top 5 of that. And let's see a couple of other things. So Barry, what do you think? You about ready to go, my man?
Yeah, Jeff, So the funny thing is we're looking at these top 5 movie franchises for this week. And I went with my favorites or what I think are my favorites. But at the same time, I had a list. I think I started off with a list of maybe 15 to 20. And I'm going in my head, yep, Jeff's already got that one. Scroll down. Yeah, Jeff's got that one, I bet. I think I've got mentally, like mental masturbation, Jeff. I've got 3 franchises that I think you're going to pick.
Really?
Oh, yes, sir.
So you think you know me? Is that what it is?
I do.
Well, we'll see. We'll see how good you're guessing. Okay, let's start off with Barry. Had a chance recently, I don't know if you had, to watch the recent John Belushi documentary. And I have to tell you, I don't know if you've seen it, Barry. It's really well done. But it's like, as I described it, it's beautifully sad because it's a really well done documentary about a guy just taking way too long, but whose death, let's be honest, if you knew anything about Belushi's life, it was basically inevitable.
Well, let me ask you a question.
It was so sad because it was like a car. It was a car crash. You knew it was going to happen, and then it finally happened, and you were still sad. Go ahead.
So you say that when you heard that John, because I remember exactly where I was when I heard that John Belushi died, and the first thing that went through my head was, I wonder if that was a heart attack, because and this is the point, I didn't associate John Belushi at that stage, which literally is almost 40 years ago, right? I didn't associate John Belushi with illegal narcotics, with drugs. Maybe that's naivete or that it wasn't being reported. Now you do anything and it's all over the internet. When you heard he died, Jeff, was that a surprise or did you immediately think drug overdose or what did you think? Do you remember what you thought?
I think I probably suspected that drugs were involved because, one thing about Belushi is all the stories about Belushi was that he lived a life of excess. It's just who he was, whether it was, drinking, whether it was drug usage, whether it was, to a slightly lesser extent than the first two, food, because his weight fluctuated. You can see pictures where his weight is fluctuating. I think I probably assumed drugs because I had heard stories that he was, real heavily into the, and of course it was the 80s and, dare I say cocaine was out there. And of course, a little trivia for you folks out there that are interested in this kind of thing. The woman who allegedly gave John Belushi the speedball, the combo of heroin and cocaine that killed him. Barry, do you know where in, let's just say, pop culture she would be well known from?
Oh, and I know this. And I can tell you her name was Kathy something, and she just died. Maybe the last 6 months.
Kathy something was the subject of the Gordon Lightfoot song.
That's it.
If You Could Read My Mind. He wrote that about this girl who he was dating. This was obviously about 10 years before the Belushi incident. But I remember when she first got popped for her culpability in Belushi's death. That's how, everyone said, oh, yeah, this is the woman that Gordon Lightfoot wrote this song about. So I'm going to tell you that if you are any kind of fan of Belushi, I would highly recommend it. It's currently running on the Showtime network. And also, Barry, I would tell you that as I was trying to figure out a comparison to Belushi, the only one I could come up with is probably Chris Farley.
Yeah.
You think that'd be fair to say?
I think it's fair. Yeah.
Yeah. Another guy who lived his life, excess, that you knew wasn't going to be around for very long. It's very sad to say. I think Farley, I don't, and again, maybe this is naive of me. I don't think Farley was necessarily drugs. I think he was more alcohol and food. Because you could definitely see the fluctuation in Farley's weight, as he began really, packing on the pounds in the last months of his life, and had a reputation as a copious drinker, shall we say? So anyways, So on the old Showtime network, the Belushi documentary, very well done, includes pretty much, I want to say, everybody that you could think of that had anything to do with his life, whether it's people from Saturday Night Live, Chevy Chase. Danny Aykroyd, Jane Curtin, and then let's see, his wife is featured very prominently in it, and so very, very sad but a very moving documentary. Big thumbs up from the folks here at Breaking Kayfabe with Bowdren Barry. Okay, Barry, now it is time. Let us take a look at May 11th, 1997, Richmond, Virginia. Back when the WWF, geez, how long has it been since they did one of these kind of the In Your House pay-per-views? Remember when they did those, Bear?
Yeah, I don't think these actually made it out of the 90s. I'd have to double check, but they were fun. What was cool about them is that it wasn't a themed pay-per-view in the sense of like Survivor Series or SummerSlam or something like that. These were the ones that they kind of crammed in between. And it really, I think what it was supposed to be was a house show, but amped up a little bit, hence In Your House, right? So I like these. I used to look forward to watching these because to me, it was the closest thing you would get to a house show. At the same time, it wasn't, if you did you ever go to a WWF house show, Jeff?
Yes. I recall that when DiBiase had first come to the WWF, they ran a house show at the venerable Sportatorium in Hollywood, Florida. And I went to see that. It might have been like, I don't know, it might have been Savage DiBiase might have been the main event. But just for the uninitiated who weren't around or were too young to remember, the In Your House pay-per-view, the gimmick was they were giving away a house at all these shows. That they had a house that was already to be moved into, and they would call out the ticket or something like that, and somebody that was in attendance, I think, or something like that, would win a house that the WWF had bought and paid for. It was kind of an interesting gimmick. Like Barry said, it didn't come out of the 90s. It was kind of I want to say, probably less than 10 pay-per-views of this type. So anyway, it's Stone Cold Steve Austin, who is at this point white hot, taking on The Undertaker. We're going to talk about The Undertaker after this, but Barry, tell me what you thought, first of all, of this match.
Yeah, absolutely, Jeff. And this was just a slight correction. This was the 15th In Your House that it occurred.
Well, what do I know? So,
yeah. So I don't know how many came after it, but maybe this was the last one. I don't know. When you hear Austin's intro, and this was an era of wrestling. I used to watch this all the time. So I was watching Monday Night Raw, and then I think I had mentioned it back at this stage. I had an illegal cable hookup, so I was able to get every pay-per-view for free, and I watched everything. I enjoyed it. I watched it. This was a fun era. This had just come off the really horrific era of like Crush and Doink and a lot of the cartoon shit, and this was the Attitude Era, and the matches were good. It was Austin, it was Bret Hart, the Hart Foundation, Undertaker, but there was a lot of guys. Vader had shown up, Ken Shamrock, a bunch of guys. But when you hear the entrances of these two guys, it's it's hard to, hey, first off, it's been 23 years, which is hard for me to believe. But, Austin was, I think, about a month after Austin had turned. And even that turn was like almost ambiguous in the way that it was done. So he hadn't reached the full out Austin stage yet where people would just lose their minds, but he was right there on the cusp of that happening. And Undertaker's entrance, certainly, I think if you were going to say one thing about the Undertaker, I think his entrance really just unbelievable. Howard Finkel, the late Howard Finkel, may he rest in peace. Another guy that was completely fucked over and screwed over by the WWE and Vince McMahon. It just does a tremendous job. And Howard Finkel, we didn't get into his death a whole lot, and certainly we don't have the time to do it today, but this was a company guy. This was a guy that lived and breathed the WWF, had for many years, and because he wasn't model attractive, he was kind of pushed to the wayside, and lesser talents were given his spot because physically they looked better. And that is, it's so insulting on every fucking level. But what is shame?
Are you talking about Penzer? Is that what you?
Yeah. Well, nobody's ever said that before, Jeff.
Well,
but no.
Okay, I digress.
But they put out Lillian Garcia, and quite frankly, actually, I like Lillian Garcia. But guys like Justin Roberts, and I don't know who else they would have replaced him with, but they were putting out people that were more physically appealing to the audience. Then, like Howard, Howard was a middle-aged guy. Long story short, I had the chance to meet him a couple of times. He would show up at Fan Fest in New Jersey, and I don't think he even charged anything. I think he was just there. He was just a sweetheart of a guy, a company guy. You never hear a bad word. And apparently he had to put up with a lot of shit from the WWE because he wanted to be included. And of course, we know the bullying, the hazing, the frat boy mentality that exists or used to exist up there. And he apparently went through a lot. Rest in peace, Howard Finkel. You were much better than the fucking company is giving you credit for.
Before you go on, let me just interrupt you, and I'll say,
if I'm fucking cranky, I'm sorry.
Okay, well, no, I'll tell you folks about Howard Finkel and telling you something about how smart to the business he was. Okay, I can remember back at some point in time, I want to say the early part of the 90s, when I was talking with Dave Meltzer on the phone one day, and we were talking about, WCW was probably in the toilet, and like they had a habit of going into now and again. And I asked him, I said, who is an out of the box guy that you think would make, good afternoon, Gunny, would make an after, thanks buddy, appreciate that, would make an interesting choice to go to WCW and be in charge, whether it's as the booker or the guy that, was coming up with the ideas and stuff like that. And Dave said Howard Finkel would be a really interesting candidate because it's a guy that knows a lot of the people in the industry. He's a very intelligent guy. He's very smart to the business. So when you say rest in peace, Howard Finkel, not just to ring announcer Howard Finkel, to wrestling fan Howard Finkel, and to a guy that was really sharp to the business, according to Meltzer, and a guy that probably, even if you weren't going to use him as a ring announcer because you thought, oh, he's not attractive enough, it's a guy that in the front office really knew his shit and should have been given a spot in the front office somewhere. So anyway,
that's a, and I didn't know that either. And that's a
every once in a while I throw a tidbit out there.
And actually a very knowledgeable tidbit, but that I like that a lot too. And you would have thought, and I think I don't know this for a fact, but I wonder if WCW reached out and Finkel turned them down. And I only say that because he was such a loyalist, or at least gave the appearance of being one of the most loyal employees that the WWE had ever seen. And let's be fair about this as well. He was kept on the payroll, I believe, until his death, even though you weren't seeing him in front of the camera. I think, my anger came from the fact that the guy was super qualified. He was better than anybody else you were going to put in that role. But because he didn't have a good looking pair of tits or, wasn't a pretty boy, he was out. You got guys like Justin Roberts, who now with AEW, pretty boy, Lillian Garcia, who we just talked about, beautiful woman, great singer, actually very nice, a big fan. But Fink was the man. And I just feel like he never truly got his due. And this was a company guy. This was the guy that if you needed an employee, you would pray that your employee would be half as loyal as Howard Finkel is, or was.
No, absolutely.
So with that, moving on with this one, Hart Foundation comes out to ringside. And this is great because it's almost like the circus just came to town. They're pushing Bret Hart, who I believe had knee surgery. He's in a wheelchair. You've got Brian Pillman, who's the loose cannon. He's crazy. You've got Jim the Anvil Neidhart, who always was presented as being slightly off balance. You've got Owen Hart, Davey Boy Smith. So just watching these guys come to ringside, it's a thing of beauty, actually. I popped when they came out. They positioned them front row, right ringside, right where the cameras are. So you can obviously figure out that some shit's going to go down. At one point, within the first 2 or 3 minutes, Austin actually grabs Owen Hart, pulls him over the ring barricade. And Jerry Lawler's great because Jerry Lawler's saying, "You look what he's doing to the fans. You can't do that to fans." And
yeah, they bought a ticket.
Exactly. He bought a ticket. He's just a fan. I just thought that was great. Austin actually does, spoiler alert, Austin does a clean job here. I don't know this, Jeff. This might be something to research. This might have been Austin's last clean job for a long time. That's my guess. I don't think he did another clean job for years after this. And it's a little surprising, but at the end, Austin does the clean job. And I should say, too, I should backtrack. Brian Pillman actually steals the hammer and starts ringing the timekeeper's bell. The referee is like, what are you doing? Get the hell out of here. He throws him out. And while this is happening, Undertaker is able to get Austin. He beats him, tombstone pile driver. It's a 1, 2, 3. And then at the end, the Hart Foundation jumps in the ring, attacks the Undertaker, goes for Austin. Austin chases them off with Bret's crutch, but stuns the Undertaker, which was just such a great ending.
Oh, he is the rattlesnake.
Yeah, so I like this match. This is not a match you're going to watch and you're going to go, "Oh my God, I've never seen anything like it." But it's a very solid match. And what this match does, which is the most important thing, is it's telling multiple stories at one time. It's not the Undertaker-Austin feud only. It's also the feud that these two will have with the Hart Foundation. So I really like the way this was presented. This was such a fun era in professional wrestling. And it was, last week you asked that great question and you posted in our Facebook group, name one word to describe the 1980s. And whether it was innocence, whether it was decadence.
I think decadence won by quite a bit.
Oh, it was a landslide, actually. But it's funny because that was the first thing I said. And who was it? Was it Alan Hunter, right? And that was the first thing Alan Hunter said. But quantifying that, the beginning of the 80s were a little innocent. It's from a personal level. Then it completely went to hell. But this was kind of, when you look at this was, and when I use the phrase innocence with the WWE, that should never make any sense. But this was maybe the last time that the WWE was pure. And when I say that, I always feel after Austin and The Rock were done, the WWE in a sense was done. There was a dead zone for years. Daniel Bryan almost brought it back. He got injured, but that was it. I think Rock and Austin for the WWE were it. So I like the Attitude Era. I don't think you can replicate your past success. I think you do have to be original and come up with something new. And hopefully they'll be able to figure that out within my lifetime, the next 30 years. But I really did enjoy this match. And again, not a 5-star classic that you go, "Oh my God, I've never seen shit like this before." At the same time, you're watching this match. You're not looking away because it's happening. Everything is right there and everything is happening. And I like that.
Yeah. Part of the reason that I when I was going through the matches, because we wanted to do an Undertaker match, and Barry was apparently not a fan of the Shawn Michaels Undertaker series. so I went looking for something else. I found this, and it's like one of those things where, if this was say a 3.5, 3 3/4 match, I think fair to say a solid half a point is added because of the involvement of the Hart Foundation. Would that be fair to say, Bear?
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah. And
you are 100% correct.
Yuck. And so, it's one of those things that, you know what, when we talk about great all-time factions, you know, whether it's the Horsemen, that's the go-to group for everybody, even though there were like 7 or 25 different variations of the Horsemen. But the Hart Foundation, to me, wow, did I love them in the WWE, you know, because they were like Brian Pillman, they were the kind of that loose cannon. And it was something, the fact that it was like, you know, the USA, it wasn't, you know, USA, it was USA sucks because Canada is so much better than they are. And that Bret Hart, who had been a hero for so long, just like basically turned not on all the fans, just the ones from the USA, just made it brilliant. Because he, you know, Canada, the guy, he was like a god in Canada during this period. Because man, you ever see some of the stuff from Canada? Bret Hart is like, he's like a deity when he comes to the ring. So yeah, so definite half a star, you know, added just for the involvement of the Hart Foundation. We're so good and so great seeing Owen and Pillman, and, you know, to a lesser extent Davey Boy and Jim Neidhart, mainly because they really weren't as prominently featured. It's not to poo-poo Jim Neidhart or Davey Boy Smith. They just weren't as featured as Owen and Pillman were in the whole midst of this thing. And Bret, you know, doing the wheelchair gimmick, and, you know, the poor guy. And there's a great moment towards the very end of the match when Austin jumps over the ring, you know, the ring gate, and he's sitting there, and Bret's in the wheelchair, looking like Ron Wright and Smoky Mountain, like, what the hell are you gonna do? So anyway, but this is a good solid, I'll say 4.25 match. You know, again, as Barry said, not a match of the year, not a great match of all time, but a fun match and recalls a really fun era. So let's talk about the guy that's the subject really of who we want to know, and that's the Undertaker. Okay. Now I got to be honest with you. I find it kind of humorous because, of course, in my book, They Call Me Booker, still available through Crowbar Press and through your humble, you know, podcaster here, if you want to reach out to me. I completely missed the boat on Mark Calloway. As I said, I did not view him as any sort of money-making guy. I thought I used verbiage in the book that they use in football when someone's getting drafted. They say he's either going to be a big, beautiful mansion or a big, empty house. And I said that I thought that Mark was going to be a big, empty house. I just didn't see anything in the guy that made me think he was going to be some big megastar. And holy shit, am I here to tell you that, boy, was I wrong. You know, I completely missed the fucking boat on this guy. And if you had told me, you know, hey, they're going to give this guy this gimmick where he's all in, you know, dresses all in black, and he's an Undertaker, and he's got the eyeshadow underneath his eyelids and stuff, I would have said, you got to be fucking kidding me. There's no way that people are gonna go for that. Well, of course, let's think about the fact that the average fan of the WWF at the time versus, say, a WCW fan, they were going to go for stuff that a WCW, you know, if that gimmick had been tried, think about like something like Kevin Nash's Oz and how horrible that was, you know, and just what a ridiculous, you know, gimmick that was. Scott Hall is the Diamond Stud. They kind of came a little close to that with Razor Ramon, but he was the Diamond Stud first. No, but so Mark was in WCW. I know when he was in Memphis, he was Texas Red. He was the Punisher, Dice Morgan. I'm trying to think of all the gimmicks he had, and nothing seemed to be clicking with this guy. And so when I saw this guy, he was part of the Skyscrapers, of course, and I was like, yeah, I don't see it. And wow, I shit the bed. I completely messed up because this guy, he took this gimmick, and, you know, the gimmick that I didn't think was going to be that good, he ran with it along with, you know, his manager, Paul Bearer. And, you know, God bless them, because they took this gimmick, ran with it, and they made it work, and they made tons of friggin' money off of it. And God bless them for that. And, you know, a big Breaking Kayfabe with Bowdren Barry salute, because, my man, you definitely made yourself part of it. So to think, Barry, that he took this gimmick and he ran with it for, I want to say, it was at least, I was going to say 25, maybe 30 years, because, you know, it was early 90s. And, you know, it's very rare that you see a gimmick like The Undertaker morph into another gimmick, which was the American Badass thing, and then morph back into the original gimmick, which I got to give credit. That's part of the genius of Vince McMahon as a promoter. He was able to do that. I don't think much of him as a human being, but as a promoter, at least at this point, boy, Vince was on fucking fire, Barry.
Yeah, that was, you know, look too, and obviously, Vince, he's built a billion-dollar industry, so he does do some things right, even though we give him shit. We went, Jeff, I don't know if you were there, and I that's what I'm trying to remember. When The Undertaker first started in the WWE, we were doing Chair Shots, the newsletter, and we went, and I don't know who was there, but I know that I went and with some other people. I'm assuming you might have been there, and I think it was at the James L. Knight Center, and I think it was the first time that Undertaker had ever appeared in Miami underneath the gimmick. So it was a relatively big deal. I remember that Skinner, Steve Kern, was also working. But one of the things that stood out to me that day, and this really goes along with what you were just saying about the reinvention and the tweaking of the gimmick, was when he first started, he was essentially presented as a cartoon character. And it was less about a very scary Undertaker. It was more a cartoon version of an Undertaker. And they were selling stuffed bears that were dressed up as the Undertaker. And I remember we actually wrote about that in Chair Shots, and some people found it offensive, which is kind of funny when you stop and think about it. And other people were like, yeah, who gives a shit, which is really probably the right response. But at the same time, he was a cartoon character in the beginning, and he morphed into a more serious character, the American Badass, which I thought that's the way you should go, because I thought that was the character to really run with, and then came back to be the Undertaker. The only criticism I would say of the Undertaker, and I'm probably going to be alone with this, is he should have retired years earlier. And this is not a knock. This is a knock, in the fact that I'm sure the money that was being offered was too much for him to turn down. But at the same time, his quality of matches dramatically, kind of dissipated. This was a guy, you watch this match, this was a very good match, and he had some really good matches, but towards the end of his career, and the reason I didn't like the Shawn Michaels stuff as much, I just didn't feel it was as strong. And I thought the Brock Lesnar matches were just terrible, just the way they were being presented. But I have heard from more than one legend in professional wrestling, in print or going public, that they consider The Undertaker as the greatest gimmick in the history of professional wrestling. I know Ric Flair has said that, but I think some guys that don't receive WWE paychecks have also said that.
So, right off the top of my head, tell me a gimmick that you think that would even come close to The Undertaker.
We're talking for length of, because again, 30 years. That's unbelievable.
It's amazing.
I don't, off the top of my head, Jeff, I don't know if you can name other gimmicks, but a shelf life of 30 years and then to go out with a special and to be revered. The guy probably, even though he now supposedly is officially retired, still going to make millions of dollars in merchandise sales for this company. I don't know. I may have to agree with Ric Flair. I don't know if there's ever been another gimmick that could approach what The Undertaker did.
And a guy that had so much respect, Barry, that he would hold these wrestlers' courts in the locker room if somebody was perceived to have perhaps gotten out of line, or if there was two guys that had a beef with one another. They usually went to The Undertaker and let him almost act like a judge.
Yeah, that, and that is, I forget who had that before him. I know that I've heard these stories before, but The Undertaker is the name that's usually thrown out there as far as doing that. But you're 100% correct again, Jeff.
Yeah, and just it shows the level of respect that he had just within the guys in the locker room, which that speaks volumes to me about not just the gimmick. When I say his character, I don't mean the gimmick. I mean the character of the man that people believed in and relied on him enough. And you have to believe that Vince relied on him to
sure
keep the peace in the locker room, and he certainly did a great job of that. So anyway, we raise an adult beverage today to the memory of The Undertaker, the gimmick, not the man. You have to wonder, since nobody in wrestling ever really retires, Barry, will this be the last we see of The Undertaker? Will he be back? I have to believe that, I have read that his schedule over the last few years was, dare I say, limited. And, when you have that sort of creative control, it allows you to come back. And I have to really wonder if he's truly done, or if Vince is going to make him some sort of offer. Oh, I don't know, maybe Saudi Arabia or something comes up, and he gets offered some ungodly appearance fee if he won't, in fact, step back into the ring once or twice more.
Yeah, that's a good point, too. And there were conspiracy theorists that were out in full force this past week, because if you look at what he said, and I'm going to be paraphrasing here, it was something along the lines of The Undertaker has had his final match or something like that, leading speculation that maybe, Mark Calloway or something that just somehow,
or maybe the American Badass returns.
Yeah, exactly. Which I would, that might be okay. The only thing I would tell you is I don't think he's capable of performing at a level that it's probably required. And with The Undertaker, I think what he could do, he could mask and kind of, put on the back burner the things that he wasn't capable of doing. He could disguise this in a lot of ways because the character essentially is dead. So he could do the limited, movements and, I don't think it's a wise move to come back, but at the same time, Vince McMahon, as he did with Goldberg, you dangle $1 million in front of somebody for a match. How do you say no to that? I get it. So
Barry, for $1 million, are you willing to take the Goldberg spear?
No, because you're asking me if I want to spend the rest of my life in a wheelchair with my spine snapped in half. So I'm going to say no. Are you
saying you're worried about the spear, or you're worried about the fact that Bill Goldberg has a reputation for not being safe?
I think it's both. I think initially I in my head, I picture my 175-pound body taking a Goldberg spear and my spine just popping through my stomach.
175?
Yeah.
Maybe a little, okay. So you said you were putting on weight.
Okay. I'm right there. Yeah.
Anyway, so question that came up, I don't know if it was in our group or maybe in the Mothership group, by friend of the show, Ian Totten. Barry, who is the worst wrestling referee you ever saw, and as far as in-ring ability, and who is the worst referee you've ever seen as far as wanting the spotlight to be on him?
Sure. So the worst referee that I can ever recall, and I'm going to go off of the beauty of, I don't think I ever saw him live, but Bronco Lubitsch, and God bless Bronco. Apparently, I never saw him as a professional wrestler. Apparently, very good. But, Bronco, the problem you had with Bronco, he couldn't even get on the mat. Like, if you remember, you could have counted to 20, and he's still trying to get down on the one knee to count to 3. So Bronco should not have been put in the position to be a referee, but he was terrible. His body just wouldn't let him do it.
So he was terrible because of physical limitations is what you're saying.
Absolutely. 100%. And look, but here's the thing. That's my assumption. I don't know if I ever saw Bronco ever referee where he wasn't, old and just not able to get around. But I would say he was terrible. We had a guy in Florida named Sonny Myers, and I love Sonny Myers, but I know a lot of people thought he was a terrible referee. And a lot of it, this kind of goes into your next question as well. Sonny was limited at times, but also would make himself the focal point. But there was a rumor that Sonny would have several adult beverages before he would get into the ring. Oh, yeah. Apparently this used to occur back in the territory days.
Wait, are you trying to tell me that wrestlers were known to drink beer?
Yeah.
Or other adult beverages?
Well, they would drink, and that's what I think it was beer. But Sonny, there would be times I think Sonny was in the ring, and Sonny was about 50 years old at this time, maybe a little older. So he would have a few, and he looked a little sloshed. But I like.
We need to get Jerry Briscoe on the horn and ask him if this could possibly be true that wrestlers were known to drink a beer or two.
I think you could get Bruce Owens, a referee.
We'll call that the Flaherty rule.
The guy who gets a mention even though he's never listened to an episode of the podcast.
He's still basking in the afterglow of his appearance on McAdam. So so who is the worst as far as drawing attention to himself, would you say?
So my opinion, I know that you're going to say somebody else, and it's very valid who you're going to say, but for me it is Tommy Young, and somebody else brought that up. Tommy Young, it's almost like, Tommy Young had to get in his spot every match. And, he had several spots, and for whatever reason, it became a joke by the time Tommy Young finally retired I think it was an injury by Tommy Rich, why Tommy Young retired. But he had a couple of spots and he did them every single match, which is really like you're trying to get yourself over. And I always felt the job of a referee should essentially, you should almost be invisible. We shouldn't know that you're out there. You're only there. But when you become the focal point, and becoming the focal point of a match, one match is fine. One match every 6 months, 3 months is fine. Tommy Young fucking every match had to make himself a focal point to some degree and had to get his spots. And I realize it probably did a world for him because everybody knows who Tommy Young is. At the same time, for me, I just felt it was way overkill.
Yeah, especially with Flair. They always did the spot where he chastised Flair.
Yep.
Flair would shove him. Tommy would point to his NWA badge. Flair would shove him again. Tommy would shove him. Flair would take the bump. It was in every one of the matches that Tommy ever did with
there you go.
You could count on it like clockwork. So I'm going to say the guy I mentioned was David Manning, who, of course, was very invested in the promotion. But, oh, my God, it was just, it seemed like just overkill that David Manning was such a focal point of the world-class promotion. And, he would grab the house mic and he'd, now I'm going to go over the stipulations of this match to Von Erich, boys. And, it just, enough already. Let's we got Mark Lawrence to do that. We don't need you to do that, David. As far as the worst official, and I'm not going to count Bronco because I really think that was physical limitations. We talked about Gilberto Roman last week, but I really think that was part of his character was that he was supposed to be like a doofus,
Doofus.
Yeah, I believe that's the first time we ever used the word doofus on this show.
You just raise a good point right there, Jeff. Why is it a referee it's got to be his character? Like, a referee, unless you're going to be a heel ref, which at this point, please don't be a heel ref. That ship is come and gone. But unless you're going to develop a character into something else, just being a doofus. I really like that though. His character was to be a doofus.
Well, I mean, he always worked the midget matches.
Yeah.
I mean, there were a lot of guys. A wrestling referee is probably a lot like an official, either in baseball, football, basketball. If the people don't know who you are, or if they don't notice you, that's good. Yes. I remember a guy during the 70s in baseball, Ron Luciano, who was the guy that he couldn't just go strike three. He had to do the, like Frank Drebin did in the damn, Naked Gun movies. And he'd like do a little dance. That was Ron Luciano in the 70s, and he put out a couple books, about how crazy life was as an umpire. But, that was him bringing attention to himself. And there were tons of guys that, whether they're officials in the NFL, college football, baseball, basketball, you never know about these guys. And it's because all they're doing is their job. And it's not to bring attention to themselves. And, like when they introduced, Jerry Calhoun in Memphis or somebody, maybe that was an ex-wrestler, whether it was Carl Fergie or Tommy Gilbert in Mid-South, people knew them. Maybe they remembered them when they were wrestling. But as long as they didn't bring attention to themselves, I think that was a job well done, is when you weren't bringing attention to yourself.
I agree. And those were all names you just mentioned. Jerry Calhoun, excellent referee. Tommy Gilbert and Carl Fergie, also really good. And what was interesting is when you look at what Watts did, and Watts did that, Watts would take guys that were retired wrestlers and he would make them referees. Fergie, Gilbert, Rick Ferrara, Igor Putski was another one. But he had a few that he did that with. These guys, essentially, they never got involved in the angles. All the time I watch Mid-South and I'm like thinking to myself, you want to turn Tommy Gilbert babyface, just have one of the heels attack his dad right now. Because it was never a secret that his dad was Tommy Gilbert. But it seemed like Watts always resisted doing stuff like that. And these guys just went out and they never became the focal point of the match. They were just referees. I like that.
And, another guy that I've just roughed up my, Paul Morton in Memphis, who was the guy that was the head of their ring crew that would bring their ring to and from different arenas. But, I don't know if they ever acknowledged the fact that he was Ricky Morton's dad. Did they?
I think they did. I think at some point he got beat down and it was acknowledged. And I think Morton may have made a save. And that could have been late in Paul's career. Yeah.
Anyway, okay. So now let's move on. Barry, it is time for us to discuss our top 5 movie franchises. Let's see If Mr. Rose knows me as well as he thinks he does.
Well,
Barrett?
yeah, and I definitely do, because, I did some research. I picked out the ones I wanted. I picked out a couple for myself that were not on any list, that just ones that I liked. But as I was going through, I'm like, yeah, Jeff's got that one. Jeff's got that one. And like I say, I've got three. But all right, so let's start off with my number 5, which is going to be the Planet of the Apes franchise.
Really?
Jeff.
Interesting.
Oh, yeah. Well,
so are you counting all of them in toto, or just the most recent Planet of the Apes movies, or the original, or what?
I'm counting them all in total, though I'll tell you, I'm really a diehard fan of the original series. I have liked the later year movies as well, not at the same level, but I am counting them total. It is a total of 9 movies, Jeff. The original, obviously, Planet of the Apes came out in 1968, Charlton Heston. And you know the drill on that one. It's an iconic movie, and when you go back and you watch, and I'll watch these. I've got the originals, the original series on my DVR. That was like groundbreaking. When
it was tremendous science fiction at the time.
Yeah, but the makeup, makeup was incredible for that time.
Well, one of the interesting things, I don't mean to interrupt, that if you watch the original part of the franchise, with the first 5 that started with Planet of the Apes. Then there was the one with James Franciscus, where he went to look for Charlton Heston. That was the second one. I can't remember what the name of it was. Then they had like Conquest of the Planet of the Apes.
Yep.
And it ended up with Escape from Planet of the Apes. And the last one was Battle for the Planet of the Apes. But what was interesting is, in all 5 of that franchises, and that's going to make me crazy now, I can't think of the second one.
Well, Jeff, I'll read Planet of the Apes, Beneath the Planet of the Apes. Okay.
So as you started going down from 1 to 5, the amount of expense that was put out for the costumes and the mask that the actors were wearing slowly started going down. So if you compare what they looked like, Zaius and what's the one that Kim Hunter played? She was the scientist, and Roddy McDowall. Their makeup is tremendous. But by the time they got to Battle of Planet 8, they might as well have been wearing a Halloween mask, because let's just say the budget was slightly less. So anyway, it was
bad. Yeah. And on that note, too, remember there was even a TV show that lasted a year or two. Yeah. And I forget the 2 guys' names. James Naughton, who was
in relation to David.
It's his brother. Yeah, he was in something. David Naughton, we know, Making It, right, and also American Werewolf in London.
Yep.
And Jeff, Seinfeld trivia. He played the guy. He's back on the wagon, or he's off the wagon.
That's right. Right. Yeah. That was the what was it called? That was the cashmere sweater with the red dot on it.
That's right. Yeah.
Cashmere. A man came to my village, and I said, "What is Georgie? It's Georgie. Cashmere. It's Cashmere. Get away from me." And we always manage to work a Seinfeld reference in it.
Got it. Mark Hertweg, that was for you, my friend, right there.
So anyway, go ahead.
No, I was going to say that's basically all I got when it comes. There are 9 movies. Okay. There were 5 in the original series. I do like the remakes. There one with Mark Wahlberg, which I think was 2001. Tim Burton directed it. When I saw it, I was really underwhelmed in the theater, and I didn't like it. A lot of it is Mark Wahlberg's acting. He's, there's nothing there. But I watched it 3 months ago. Like 2 a.m. it was on, and I watched it, and I actually enjoyed it. I think, some 19 years later, I can look back and go, that's not a bad movie. It's kind of interesting. So yeah, that's where I'm at.
The original book, Planet of the Apes, was based on a novel by a writer named Pierre. I want to say it's either Bolle or Bolle. It's Boulee or LLE, something like that. But as I said, tremendous. Yeah, exactly. But a tremendous work of science fiction. And the second one, too, where James Franciscus plays an astronaut that comes looking for the Charlton Heston character. And that's really good science fiction. And after that, it kind of started kind of meandering a little bit. The first 2 were very strong. The first one, though, is an absolute masterpiece of science fiction. Really good stuff. So, yeah, that's a good one, Barry. Nice one. So my number 5, I'm going to start out with Barry. I've said before, the rarest of all things is a movie franchise or movie trilogy where what you have is a movie franchise where the first movie in the franchise is not as good as the last movie in the franchise. Oh, we are talking John Wick. I friggin' love the John Wick series of movies with Keanu Reeves as this assassin for hire who basically gets himself in hot water with the rest of the assassins that are out there. And there's a price that's put on his head. A fascinating bit of work there. Good stuff. John Wick. What do you think of John Wick, Bear?
I love John Wick movies too. They are, to me, they're everything that an action movie should be. There is very little downtime. It is a roller coaster that is from the beginning and the end of the movie. And Keanu Reeves is a guy who's limited, and his acting range completely works for John Wick, though.
Yeah,
He just fantastic.
No, I was going to say fantastic. I was going to say, one of the things about Keanu Reeves, think about it, and you're absolutely correct. He's not Laurence Olivier by any stretch of the imagination, but think about the fact that Keanu Reeves has managed to come up with how many different franchises. He's got the stinking Matrix. He's got, the John Wick series. You come up with more than one franchise of movies, you're doing pretty well by yourself, And a guy by all accounts, a very down to earth guy. He's not like a Hollywood quote unquote guy at all. And I have a ton of respect for the fact that the guy's still like that.
Yeah, and that's a very good point. First off, and it also means you're really smart. I think if you're doing that, you attach yourself to what is going to, if the perception is, okay, we're going to try to make this a franchise. And I think they usually know that ahead of time as well. How smart to attach yourself to that. And Robert Downey Jr. with Iron Man, he knew exactly what he was doing because he knew it would be a franchise. So I agree. I love the John Wick movies. The only thing I would say, I love the first movie. Yeah. First movie, Jeff, had me hooked. And I remember the day after I saw it, I was going somewhere with a friend of mine who happened to be of Russian descent. And immediately I'm like, hey, have you ever seen John Wick? It's about all these Russian mobsters. And he's going, of course I saw it. And we talked it. I love the movie.
Yeah, and some insane stunts and shootouts. Great stuff. And there's no better way to kill a rainy afternoon as if we're sitting here and it's supposed to go down to the mid-20s in Georgia tonight. Pretty tough. But it's raining and you pop in a movie or you see a movie and it's John Wick and you're like, okay, I got the next 2 hours taken care of, Barry. So now give me your number 4, Bear.
My number 4 franchise is the Hannibal Lecter franchise.
Really?
So, well, so here's the thing about Hannibal Lecter's movies. There's been a couple of different Hannibal Lecters. You go back to the original film that debuted Hannibal Lecter was Michael Mann's Manhunter from 1986, which is maybe in my top 25 movies of all time. It is just an astounding movie. Fucking William Peterson. Most people know him from CSI. My God, was he great.
Yeah, that was a great movie. Very moody. Michael Mann movies are always like they got a little bit of moodiness. He did Miami Vice a few years back and really incorporated a sense of mood to his film. And that's a great point. That's a tremendous movie. Go ahead.
Yeah, Manhunter's great. There's the scene in Manhunter as well, which is, I think it might be one of my favorite scenes in any film ever. Certainly it's going to rank right up there. It's the very ending where Dollahide has the blind girl and he puts on the music and it's dun, 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 which is
Inagata-Vita. Yeah.
Yeah. And he's blasting it in the house and the girl is screaming. And eventually the character played by William Peterson crashes through one of the windows in the house, but does it in like slow motion. You see him running towards the window, the glass. It's maybe 15, 20 seconds. And he jumps through. It's just an amazing scene. And as you just said with Michael Mann, it's the moodiness. It's the way that the whole scene was devised between the lighting and the photography and the music. It's just amazing to see it. I love that movie. Obviously, Silence of the Lambs. If you don't like Silence of the Lambs, I need to know where you live because we're going to send somebody to your house to re-educate you because I think that's one of the great movies of all time. And I do like the other ones. I liked Red Dragon a lot. I liked Hannibal a lot. Hannibal Rising, I didn't like quite as much, but I do like the entire franchise where a lot of times with some of these movies, and this will be one of my picks coming up, that some of the movies I don't quite love as much as I love the other ones. This, though, with Hannibal Lecter, all 5 of these movies are great.
So, a little trivia: who was the blind girl?
In was it Joan Allen?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
You got it. Very good.
Got it. Yeah.
So yeah, great actress. Let's see.
Who played Dollahide?
Tom Noonan.
Fucking Tom Noonan, man. This is a guy. He's a character actor, and he's I think a New York-based character actor. And if you like the movie FX, which I've raved about the movie FX, Tom Noonan plays a great shady character. I don't think he's ever played a good guy. He's always playing somebody who's shady, but what a great actor he is.
So now let's go to my number 4 pick. And this is I will say, 4 films in this series. And of the 4 films, 3 of them are great. One of them is, I'll say, slightly disappointing. And that's based primarily on the other ones. That is the Mad Max series. We had Mad Max. We had Mad Max 2, The Road Warrior. The third Mad Max with Tina Turner was the one that I thought was slightly disappointing. And then we had Mad Max Fury Road that came out like the last year or two, which was fantastic. And so, yeah, what's great is they take this series that originally starred Mel Gibson and they turned it over to Tom Hardy. And I have heard that there's going to be another 5th in the series that's going to primarily not focus on Max, but it's going to focus on is it Furiosa, or the character that was played by Charlize Theron, I believe,
right.
is the one that they're going to basically take the storyline and make it her storyline as they continue. Director George Miller, fantastic. I mean, even the third one with Tina Turner, it's not a bad movie. It's just like in relation to the other 3, it doesn't hold up as well.
Yeah, you know what hurts about that movie too is the concept of what that movie was supposed to be is through the roof. You've got this Thunderdome. You've got Tina Turner, Tina Turner literally was on fire in 1985. What's love got to do with it, Jeff?
Yeah.
I don't know. But this woman was everywhere in 1985. You've got Angelo Rosito, who's playing the little person with Humongous. And then think about the professional wrestling connection.
Oh, my God, yeah.
How many Humongouses did we see? And then Thunderdome, which we're still seeing Thunderdome in the WWE. They still call it that.
And the guy that played the announcer, who promos the match before they start, and then it's 2 minutes at 1 man leave, and just like they said WCW completely stole the gimmick, which any good wrestling company steals gimmicks, no question about it, from the movies especially. And that was just the build up to that, and the way he talked about in this corner, the man from was it Out in the Mist, like so little is known of him, and then they go to the Humongous, and it was just tremendous. And the problem is it reached this kind of apex. I don't want to say penultimate, but it reached an apex, and then it kind of started when they started going out in the desert with the kids. It just kind of was like, where are they going with this? And I don't know if that was Max's way of redeeming himself as a character. But yeah, that's like the first part of the movie I thought was really good and really interesting. And then it just kind of like hit the skids and kind of went off in a different direction that I was not a fan of at all. But of the 4 movies, 3 of them are tremendous. Hell, Mad Max 2, The Road Warrior is my second favorite film of all time, for God's sakes. And then Fury Road, such great stunts. The image of the guy on the front of the car with the guitar that shot flames out of it was just awesome.
Yes.
And it was a great action movie. Okay, so Barry, you're number 3.
Yeah, and to that point too, the third one, not to belabor, but the third one was also boring. And there were times when, because I saw it in the theater, I think I was there even opening day. I was so excited. And it was such a letdown because at the end of the day, it just was boring. And a Mad Max movie shouldn't be boring, but the concept of what they had, my God, how do you fumble it? But Jeff, I should say the Mad Max franchise was one of the 3 I knew you would choose. So check on that one. Let's get to my number 3. I knew, Jeff. This is one that I thought maybe you might go for, but I'm jumping on this one. The Dirty Harry franchise.
Really? I got to be honest with you. That's a good choice that I had not thought of.
All right. 5 movies, starting off with 1971's Dirty Harry, moving on to Magnum Force, The Enforcer, Sudden Impact, and The Deadpool. I love them all. Dirty Harry is an iconic film. It is, Make My Day, all that shit. It's, everything about it. Magnum Force is what really brought me to the table, though, because I had a friend that was working in a movie theater, and I think I was 10 years old, and me and some of my other little 10-year-old friends, we went to the movie theater, and he let us in the side door to see Magnum Force. And if you remember, there are some great boob shots in Magnum Force. So let me tell you, as a 10-year-old, how excited we were. So yeah, but I like them all. I do think the first, I don't know, Sudden Impact, for whatever reason, I didn't love. I actually liked Deadpool, but the first three, Dirty Harry, Magnum Force, and The Enforcer, I just thought were fantastic.
So the first one, let's point out the tremendous co-starring role. Was it Chris Robinson that played the
Oh my God. Yeah. No, Andrew Robinson.
Andrew Robinson. I'm sorry.
Yes.
He was so fantastic. The guy had trouble getting work because people thought he was legitimately crazy. The one that had David Soul and Robert Urich. Which one was that? Was that Magnum Force, or was that the third one?
I think that was the third one.
What was it called again?
It was, of course, I just erased all this off. Sudden Impact, Magnum Force, Dirty Harry, Deadpool, and it's the one that that escapes me right now.
Okay, so anyway, but there was a lot of, and the third guy was Tim Matheson, who was in Animal House and all that kind of stuff. So it had a really good supporting cast. Sudden Impact was a good movie that had a very, very disturbing rape scene in it, like really a graphic with Sandra
Locke.
Yeah,
Sandra Locke.
And it was a very disturbing rape.
That was at the beach, right? The rape scene at the
And then the fifth one, the Deadpool. Do we remember who played the drug-addicted rock star?
The drug-addicted rock was Chris Zaha.
It could have been, but it was someone with actual talent.
Okay.
And that would be Jim Carrey.
Oh.
Played the drug-addicted rock star. Was in the trailer shooting up heroin, and he was on the list of the Deadpool. So, yeah, a great series. No question about it. You're 100% right.
Check.
So, my number 3, let's see how well you know me, Mr. Rose. Not a surprise, a series of 6 films, actually. I'm going to say that of the 6 films, 3 of them I really, really like. A fourth one I like pretty good. And then the last 2 in the second part of the 6 films I thought were pretty disappointing. That, of course, the Lord of the Rings series, which was, when the Lord of the Rings first came out, this was an undertaking that had been talked about just for years because of just how much Lou pointing out that was called The Enforcer, the one we messed up on. So thank you, Lou. Appreciate that, buddy.
Thank you, Lou. That's right.
And but the Lord of the Rings, the story by J.R.R. Tolkien was thought to be basically unfilmable for a lot of reasons. There had been a animated movie made by Ralph Bakshi, I think. I want to say late 70s, maybe like 80 or 81. But when director Peter Jackson, who really had not done a whole lot before, I know he'd made a movie called The Frighteners, but was not a guy that was seen as some sort of like Scorsese-esque visionary that you thought, oh yeah, this is going to be great because Peter Jackson's involved with it. But the movies, the Lord of the Ring, the Fellowship of the Ring, the Two Towers, and the Return of the King, absolutely fantastic. I was so into those kind of stories when I was in high school and college, what they call the sci-fi fantasy. And then they came back a few years after that. They made The Hobbit, which I thought The Hobbit was good. The second and third of the Hobbit movies, I know the third one's called The Desolation of Smaug. I can't remember what the second one in the Hobbit series was called, but those, too much CGI. I like a dose of CGI without it being completely just over the top ridiculous, and that's kind of what it seemed like with the second and third of the Hobbit series. But the Fellowship of the Ring, the Two Towers, and the Return of the King, I actually enjoyed. Out of all of them, I enjoyed the first one, the Fellowship of the Ring, the most. The Return of the King ended up winning the Academy Award for Best Picture. I think that was basically a hey, we think you did a good job, and we forgot to give you the Academy Award for the first one. Kind of thing, which the Academy Awards has been known to do that. I recall Glenn Close, she won the Academy Award for it was with the movie with John Malkovich. But it was the year after
Dangerous Liaison.
Dangerous Liaison. She given the Academy Award for that when the year before she had made what was the one with Michael Douglas where she was the
Fatal Attraction.
Fatal Attraction. And everybody knew she was supposed to get it for Fatal Attraction. They didn't give it to her, and the next year they basically like, oh, here you go. We're giving it to you for Dangerous Liaisons because we know we should have given it to you last year. But anyway, so Barry was the Lord of the Rings part of that. It
was not. You got me on
really?
And Jeff, here's the good news on this one. Do you own any of the DVDs for this trilogy or whatever it is?
I enjoy. I have the original, the Lord of the Rings trilogy. I do not have the ones for The Hobbit.
All right, I will double check. Somebody sent me years ago, and I don't know. I don't know exactly what I have. I'd have to look, but they sent me years ago DVDs based off of these stories. And I don't know which of the movies, but I've never even opened them. And I'd be more than happy to send them your way because I don't see myself watching them anytime soon. So,
well, okay,
there you go.
So, what would be your number two?
Number two, and this is tough because I've got 4 left, but it is out of these 4, I know where I'm going. It's going to be the Terminator series.
Good choice.
And yeah, so I'm a big mark for the Terminator series, and what I love, the first Terminator, one of my favorite movies of all time. I watch it probably once a month. Over this past summer, it was on cable 5 times per day on pay cable, and I would just sit and watch it because I loved it. I do like the originals, and when I say that, I do like my Linda Hamilton. So I do prefer the movies Terminator 1, Terminator 2, and then the last one, which came out last year, Terminator Dark Fate, she was in.
I have not seen that, but I heard that was very good.
I loved it.
I've heard that was the best one since T2.
So that's what. So did I tell you that? I must have told you.
No, I've heard that though.
Okay, that's exactly what I would say. I did feel that the ones, which is Terminator 3, Rise of the Machines, and Salvation and Genesis, especially Salvation and Genesis, it was a different storyline essentially. But I like those. But, I like the first 2 and I like Dark Fate. Dark Fate is really good, Jeff. And I saw it in the theaters in LA last year. It's currently playing on Prime and it's free. So as long as you've got the Prime subscription, you'll be able to see it. I think I've watched it 3 or 4 times. It's highly unique. I think if anything, Dark Fate is a little reminiscent of the second one more than anything else. So I recommend the franchise. But give me the first 2 and then Dark Fate, and I'm really, really happy.
I will say that when the first one came out and it got to have like almost a cult-like following, I can remember being, and I think I might have mentioned this in a prior episode, I remember being in the theater waiting to watch another movie, and the coming attractions were on, and they did the bit where all you saw was like a case and somebody going and opening a case, and they opened, the case was like some sort of sealed case, and you open it and you see the Terminator's like skull and with the eye glistening, or the red eye, and it said T2 coming. And I mean, the whole theater fucking popped. Everyone's like, holy shit. This is something that everyone had been waiting for. And I think I saw that the night it came out, and the theater was absolutely packed. And afterwards it was like, when can we go see this again? Because to me that, that's, the reason I think that movie stands above all the rest of them is because the first Terminator is a great story, but it gives off the vibe of being a very 80s film because of Linda Hamilton's hair and stuff like that. Whereas the other one, which came out, I want to say 91 or 92, it doesn't look like dated, And Robert Patrick is so good as the new Terminator. And, there's the little twist where now they've turned the original Terminator babyface. Now, the other ones that you mentioned, the Terminator 3, was it Rise of the Machines? That one had the female Terminator. Am I correct?
Yeah, and I think was it the third one that also had Claire Danes?
Yes.
Yeah, I just didn't I didn't quite.
Well, no. What I was going to say was the one part of T3 that was good is there's an excellent car chase where she's got like a crane, and she's driving through like the city of Los Angeles, and she's got the crane. And it's in front of her, and then she kind of turns it to the right, and the thing starts wiping out buildings as they're going down the street.
Right.
And it's a fantastic car chase. That was definitely the highlight of that movie. The next one is the one that didn't have Christian Bale. I don't know if he played.
It did.
Yeah, but he was in it. That was like, it was good. I don't think I ever saw Genesis, and I definitely haven't seen Dark Fate. But that's definitely on my to watch list. Good. I would say that's a very solid choice. No problem with that whatsoever.
Well, there you go. And again, give me. And you're right. Look, you're right about 2. The majority of people will say that 2 eclipses 1. The special effects, the story is great. Everything about 2 is great. I love 1, and I think what I do like about it is just what you touched on, Jeff. It's the fact that it does have this 80s vibe. It's got great acting. I love when they're in the police station, and for the first time ever, Arnold says, "I'll be back." Yeah. And we know exactly he drives the car right through.
Sarah Connor.
Yeah. Sarah Connor, I've come for you. John Connor. And you've got Lance Henriksen and Paul Winfield is the number 1 and 2 cops in the station. They're great. Michael Biehn, who plays the love interest and the father of John Connor, is killed off in the first movie. And did it ever strike you as odd, Jeff, that this guy didn't become a bigger star? For some reason, I always thought that this guy was going to explode, and I thought he was going to be a big star. And instead, I think he made a movie about Navy SEALs, and that's all I can recall ever seeing him in.
Well, I mean, very similarly, Viggo Mortensen, he did History of Violence. He did Easter Promises, which were both great after the Lord of the Rings franchise. And then, he made a couple other movies, but he did not become anywhere near what I thought he was going to become. And you're absolutely right. Very similarly to Michael Biehn.
Yeah. Viggo, let's be honest, too. Viggo's a hell of an actor.
Yes. Very good.
Yeah. And he's a working actor. You don't always see, he makes a lot of small independent movies. So you don't always see his movies because they're playing in front of audiences of like 12, the kind of movies I would watch. Michael Biehn, though, he still makes movies. They, as of a few years ago, they were straight to DVD. I don't know what that phrase would be now. I guess straight to streaming in some form, but
there's a lot of movies that are going straight to streaming at this point.
That's true. The majority are, but I think at some point, I think you're going to see less low budget. In the old days, especially the 80s, there were so many low budget movies, especially these teen comedies, that would show you boobs and asses and stuff, which is really the purpose of the movie. And these movies they would be in the theater for maybe a week, if even, then they would wind up on Showtime at 2 a.m. I think we're not going to see a lot of these movies anymore. I think this whole, straight to DVD kind of thing, I think it's just done with. But I digress.
Who was the guy? This is somebody that I'm sure you would know. Who was the guy? He actually used to work, I want to say, like a Monday Night Football in the 70s. He became a movie director during the 80s. His name was Andy. And he did like the Malibu Beach. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
And they were all direct to video. He made tons of money on them because it was all like guns and boobs. And that was the whole, which
smart.
There's nothing wrong with that.
Right. Smart.
So, okay. My number 2 movie franchise, Barry, let me know if you got me on this one, is another franchise that I want to say they did 3 that were tremendous. They did a 4th one that I enjoyed with a new lead actor. And then the 5th one where they brought the original actor back that I was a little bit disappointed in, not tremendously, but a little bit disappointed. And that is the Jason Bourne series, the Bourne Identity, the Bourne Legacy, the Bourne whatever. Just Matt Damon as Jason Bourne basically out James Bonded James Bond, and that and the, between the Jason Bourne series, the Mission Impossible series, the James Bond series, these new action heroes that were just absolutely tremendous.
Yeah, and so the funny thing, I just texted you a photo. I had Jason Bourne on my list, Jeff. If you look, I just texted you the photo so you could see it. But
now you're kind of assuming what number 1 is here, aren't you?
No, but tell me I'm wrong.
I'll throw you a loop. Now I'm at a spite, not going to do it.
There you go. But I knew where you were going to go for one. How could you not? But you've waxed poetically about the Jason Bourne series. And it's been a while, but you were really, as we talked, and I think it was the car chase episodes, maybe.
Yes.
That you really were. I could tell the love, and I'm like, he's going to go with Jason Bourne. And let's be honest, that's a solid choice right there. a lot of people would actually agree with you on that.
Yeah, there's a tremendous, and then they made the fourth one in the series with the guy, from the Marvel series that plays what is it, Bullseye? The guy that's the Archer. I can't think of the actor.
Jeremy
Renner, maybe.
Jeremy Renner. Thank you. Yes.
And and he's very solid actor. He's really good in the Marvel series. But he that was called The Bourne Legacy, I want to say, and that on its own was a very solid action film. Again, good car chase in that one. But it just like all of a sudden it just took the Bourne series in a kind of different direction. And it wasn't quite as good as the first three Matt Damon had done. And then Matt Damon came back for the fifth in the series, which is called Jason Bourne, which was a good movie, not a really good movie. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, and I don't know which ones I've seen. I don't think I've seen every film in the franchise, but Matt Damon is, everything he's done as far as these movies has been good. They're really good. This is, I remember we talked about this as the new, well, I'm going to shut up because I don't want to give away your number one. So that was the comparison I was going to make.
It was. And
right.
Much of the way that at some point, I want to say in the late 80s, early 90s, they started coming up with all these different characters that were basically very similar to the Bond series, like right. Whether it was secret agents or guys working on the CIA. And there are others that, there's a series of books that I have read that is called The Gray Man, which is, it's basically like a guy that's ostracized by the CIA. They kind of exposed him and he's living, life, what do you call, not on the edge, but where he's sort of slightly beneath what they call, what's the word I'm looking for? He's off the grid. That's the way I'm looking for. Okay, that's what I was looking for. And but he's like basically an assassin for hire. And he only goes after people that are like bad people. He won't go, like, oh, you go kill my neighbor next door. I don't like him. Doesn't do that. He's going after dictators or despots or something like that. But The Gray Man's a really good series. Would not be shocked at all if they turned that into a movie franchise, Barry. So, Barry, it is time for you to reveal your number one. And I want to say, I got a thought process that's going through my head, and I'm going to see if I'm right. So tell me what your number one franchise is.
All right. Well, do you want to reveal it, or do you want me to reveal
Well, I'm actually thinking, because I'm not sure if they actually did three of them. I know they did one or two. I don't know if they did three, but I'm gonna guess and say that because I know you love the movie The Reanimator. So is that it?
Oh no, it's not. And it could have been, but it wasn't. They did a Bride of Reanimator. You're right, and then something else. I never got it. So. Before I give you my number one, let me give you two that I did not choose, but they're on my list. You didn't choose them either. One is the Toy Story franchise. It is a sweet, excellent. Yeah, it's a sweet. If you've actually watched all four of the Toy Story movies and you've never either gotten choked up or cried during those movies, you need to take your pulse because you may not be alive. I don't know how you.
Oh, when the toys go to the.
Oh, Mike! Don't even start.
It's like.
Yes.
I don't know. Somebody's cutting onions or something.
Exactly.
I'm getting a little verklempt.
I just love these movies.
There's your Yiddish phrase for the day.
Verklempt. Yeah, first time ever, right?
I got a little emotional.
It is. They are so sweet. They are so great. The other one. Was an easier decision to leave it off was the Die Hard franchise. So not
a Christmas movie.
Oh, 100% a Christmas movie. And I'm excited to get back into this time of year. So we need to, Pineapple on Pizza, Die Hard Christmas movie. Everybody's got opinions on this one, but the first movie I think it's one of the great movies of all time. Unfortunately, everything after I don't feel the same way about. And I can watch them. Some I like more than others. There's one I just barely tolerate. But if they had all been as good as the first one, or even close to the first one, I probably would have put this in my top five. I mean, I know I would have put it in my top five. It would have bumped somebody out, and I didn't do that. So my number one, Jeff, the Vacation series. Really? I love all five of these movies. Let me backtrack. I love the first four. I did not like the remake that occurred in 2015 with Ed Helms and I forget whoever else was in it, but I didn't like that one.
Christina Applegate, was she in it?
I think she was. I think she played the wife, right?
Okay.
But the first one to me, That's just an amazing movie. I love Christmas Vacation. That has become a lot of people's Christmas movie. Vegas Vacation, that's a lot of fun. But European Vacation, I remember, again, opening day, I remember exactly where I saw it. I remember where I went afterwards. And I remember being really disappointed in European Vacation, going, man, that was nothing like the first one. And over time, I've gotten to really appreciate European Vacation, where I think it's really funny. Pig in a Poke, there's so much going on.
The wife in the shower.
Well, that was the first one when he catches her in the shower and she's at Beverly D'Angelo, actually topless. However, Jeff, if you stop and pause like I did many times in the 80s and even in the 90s, she's wearing her underwear in the shower, which is very bizarre. So somebody in, filming didn't realize, just go waist up. And let's be honest, they were real and they were spectacular, Jeff.
And Al Pacino gave that up.
Yeah. Well, have you seen her lately, though?
Well,
right. She loves her plastic surgery.
He got the prime years. That's for sure.
He did. But I love the vacation movies. The first one, to me, it's an iconic film. It stands on its own. But I think all four, the first four, are fantastic. And the remake, you can keep the remake.
So I would say that I like the first one real good. I'm not real crazy about the Vegas Vacation. I think Christmas Vacation is probably second to the original.
Sure.
So, and I was going to say, you were talking about Die Hard. Die Hard 1, of course, one of the great action films of all time. Die Hard 2 is a good movie, not great. The Die Hard movies, I think, always as good as the lead heel. And the third one, I think it was the third one, had Jeremy. Was it the third or the fourth one had Jeremy Irons as the lead heel?
I think it was the third one.
Where it was all about it, like they were robbing the federal
airplane
or something. Yeah. And then the fourth.
So maybe
one,
that was the second. I don't know. Yeah,
but the second one had John Amos as the soldier, and he was like the guy's sort of flunky.
Which one was Samuel L. Jackson? That's the one with
that's Die Hard with a Vengeance. And then there was the next one that had Timothy Olyphant, which was another one of those movies that you talk about, much like the Road Warrior movie we talked about, Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome, where you had a great beginning and middle, and then like at the end when he's chasing after him and he's in a plane and the plane is crashing on the and it's just like, what the are you doing? I mean, you had such a great Timothy Olyphant is really good as a computer genius. That's like, that he's having this little battle with online and how he shuts down entire grids of cities. And geez, talk about stuff that's like seems like a little too realistic. But that was really good until the ending. And then I thought the ending completely shit the bed, So, definitely a really, really good series. The first one, absolutely top notch. So my number one, before I get to it, Barry, let me tell you the one that didn't quite make the list, and that's the Indiana Jones series of movies, Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Sure.
One of the classic all-time action films. And it was a Temple of Doom, which was not quite as good, but it was still really good. Had some great chase sequences. Then there was the one with Sean Connery as his dad. Why am I drawing a blank on it now? Indiana Jones and the shit. I'll think of it in a second. But
Temple of Doom.
No, Temple of Doom was the second one. The third one was Indiana Jones. Lost Crusade. Yeah, Last
Crusade. Right.
That to me was the second best in the series. Then they bring in and the fourth one was the Crystal Skull, where they brought in Shia LaBeouf. I was not a fan of that at all.
I was out. I'm out at that point. Yeah.
But the first and third one are really good. The second one is good to very good. The fourth one not really worth your time, but a really solid series. And the first one is just, oh my God, when that he's being chased. I remember seeing that in the theater when that boulder's chasing him in the cave. That's absolutely epic stuff. But my number one choice, as Barry has alluded to, now and forever will be James Bond. I grew up on the James Bond, the Sean Connery franchise, and I will go to my grave, which hopefully is a while from now, Barry. I'm not looking forward to that anytime soon. Sean Connery is the ultimate James Bond, because Sean Connery was James Bond the way that Ian Fleming had written the character. And I've said this on more than one occasion. Roger Moore, a lot of people I know that are in my general age group grew up seeing Roger Moore at the theater as James Bond. But Roger Moore was a different take on the character then Ian Fleming wrote the character. Roger Moore was basically playing a role that he played in a show called The Saint. He was playing the Saint as James Bond. There was much more wisecracking, much more like kind of like comedy bits thrown in. He did do one or two movies where he was much closer to the original character. Timothy. What was the next?
Timothy Dalton.
Timothy Dalton, who played the character much more serious, but he fell victim that they made a James Bond movie about James Bond going after coke dealers. Which I was not a big fan of that movie at all. But he was solid. Then you had Pierce Brosnan, who I thought he did an acceptable job. The very first Pierce Brosnan movie, GoldenEye, was, I thought, the best of the Pierce Brosnan ones. The last one he did, Die Another Day with Halle Berry, started off, that's another movie, started off like the first hour of the movie was really good action. And then they went up to Iceland and they're doing like invisible cars and stuff like that. And it just was a complete shit show. Daniel Craig then comes in approximately 2005. He takes over the franchise. He is now, I think they have done the wraps on the last of the Daniel Craig James Bond movies. I like Daniel Craig, probably second best to Sean Connery as James Bond. A lot of speculation as to who the new James Bond's going to be. I've heard everybody from Idris Elba to who's the Tom Hardy, who we mentioned, who was the guy in the last Mad Max movie. A lot of different people. I've even heard there's a possibility of making James Bond into a female character. I really hope they don't do that, because try to keep the character at least true to the writer's original framework of what he had the character as. And I know times have changed. The sexist, misogynistic James Bond maybe doesn't fly as well at the theater. But movies like Thunderball, Goldfinger, From Russia with Love, the Casino Royale, the first Daniel Craig movie, Skyfall. These are all movies that I just absolutely love, Barry.
Yeah, and this was, I knew the second we did this, I was like, yeah, number one for you is going to be James Bond. And let's be honest, is James Bond, and the answer is yes. I don't have to ask it. This is the most successful movie franchise in the history of motion pictures.
Well, and I will interrupt you. I will say up until a couple of years ago, that was absolutely correct. A franchise series that we did not miss, and I'm sure there are people out there going, how the fuck could you do this and not talk about Marvel? And the Avengers series and all those movies, I think, have probably, based on, I'm not even guessing, because they were so successful, they probably have passed the James Bond series as far as financials, windfall at the box office. So yeah, I don't know if it's James Bond anymore. The Avengers series may have surpassed that.
Well, how about this? It maybe financially it has surpassed it, certainly when you look at that. But again, if you're looking at volume, but they do have a lot of movies as well. Yeah, that's a good point, I guess. I think there's something more iconic about James Bond because you're going back to the early 1960s as well,
Sure.
So you're looking at something that has literally been around for 50 years, and that to me, that to me is going to trump whatever Marvel's doing.
Actually, it's close to 60 now, which is amazing.
Oh my God. There you go.
Yeah, because I think the first one came out, Dr. No, 62, 63. Wow. So yeah, we're definitely getting close there. So, so Barry, next, now that we've revealed our choices, it is time for us. A suggestion in the group a couple of weeks back said, why don't you guys go take a look and review Dazed and Confused, the director Richard Linklater's film from, I want to say, what was it? 95? 93. Okay.
Yep.
Starring a cast. It's funny, Barry, we talked about Michael Biehn not becoming a huge deal. Other than Matthew McConaughey, there's some good character actors in here, but nobody that just went absolutely batshit crazy successful. I guess the closest person would be Mila Jovovich or Jokovic, who did the Resident Evil series. But, some very good character actors. But other than McConaughey, did anyone really break out of this movie that had all these young stars?
Well, so McConaughey, obviously, he's an icon at this point. Mila Jovovich, as you just said, stunningly beautiful. I've got some great trivia that I'll share with you as we discuss this movie. But listen to the cast, and you're right, with the exception of maybe Ben Affleck, who has a small role in the film, he did become a big star. Jason London, twin brother Jeremy London. They'd been in some Kevin Smith films. Joey Lauren Adams, also in Kevin Smith films. Let me ask you a question. What do you think of Joey Lauren Adams, Jeff?
She's got sort of a I don't think she's drop dead gorgeous, but she's got a cuteness to her that definitely makes her very appealing. She was also she was in the Adam Sandler movie too.
She was Big Daddy.
Big Daddy, yeah.
Yeah, somebody referred to her, and I saw this over the last couple of weeks, and it was an article I was reading that she was the most, in the 90s, she was the most attractive flat-chested woman out there. I know. It's like a left-handed compliment, I guess. Other cast members, Rory Cochrane, who went on to work, I think it was CSI Miami, until he was killed. Adam Goldberg, this is not the Adam Goldberg that people know from not Modern Family, the Goldbergs, but he's a character actor who's done a lot of work. Dina Martin, Dean Martin's daughter or granddaughter, I'm not sure. Anthony Rapp, who is a guy that was in Rent. He's a Broadway actor. He's done a lot of work throughout the years. Cole Hauser, the son of the great Wings Hauser, who's one of the great B-movie actors of all time. Parker Posey, another one that I think she was an indie film darling 25 years ago in the 90s. And I think she got Lyme disease. She had some sort of health issue. And essentially, she never really took off as a star. But you are right. Other than McConaughey, and I'm not going to count Affleck, I think, because the role is really small. But Matthew McConaughey is the guy that just literally exploded. And rightly so. He's a fantastic actor.
Yeah. All right. Just
there it is.
There's so many great yet disturbing lines that McConaughey utters in this. Yeah, I love them redheads. Yeah. And then the all-time classic line, which is high school girls. I get older, but they stay the same age. It's like, now, can you imagine a movie being released with that line? That just sounds so disturbing and so troubling. But yeah, there's so much about my wife and I actually sat and watched this the other night. First of all, absolutely a great soundtrack. So many iconic classic rock songs that just when they kick in different scenes in this movie.
Slow ride. Yeah, you're like, take it easy. Yeah,
exactly. Great good stuff. And Barry, your singing voice not quite up to the lead singer of Foghat. I'm sorry.
No, definitely not.
Your voice knows Zaha. Let's just say that. Well, yeah. But let's talk about some of this stuff going on in the movie. So for those that somehow over the last 25 plus years have never managed to see Dazed and Confused, we're talking about the last day of school in this small Texas town. Okay. And the small Texas town has a rather odd tradition where the kids that are juniors in high schools that are going to be seniors the following year go, and I'm trying to figure out, Barry, this was a question my wife and I asked. The kids they go and seek out, are those kids in ninth grade and the junior high was just like maybe 6 through 9 or 7 through 9? Or are those kids that are in eighth grade that are getting ready to go into ninth? What do you think?
Wow.
Very, very deep question. Huh?
I was going to say, holy cow, we may have to save this. I'm going to say they were in ninth grade.
Okay, that's fair because the stuff like where one of the characters ends up dating a girl on this last day of school who's like at least a year or two older than him, and the thought of like a sophomore girl in high school dating an eighth grader is a little sketchy. That I certainly wouldn't have seen. I mean, I can remember in my high school we had a kid that was a junior that was dating a senior, and everything that was kind of like we had never really seen that before. But I can't imagine. A 10th grader maybe dating a ninth grader or something I could see. A 10th grader dating an eighth grader, if it's a girl that's in 10th grade and the guy's in eighth grade, I don't really see that happening. But so anyway, so the tradition is that the kids, let's just say ninth grade, the ninth graders that are going into the high school the following year are basically humiliated by the 11th graders by being paddled. And I don't mean just like, hey, 1, 2, 3. I mean beaten savagely with the paddles. They are, and apparently allowed by the teaching staff at the school, because when the kids go to the teacher and say, can you let us out early so we can get away? No. You're going to take it like a man. And then the girls, the 11th grade girls get the ninth grade girls and they make them, wear baby bonnets. They put pacifiers in their mouth. They squirt ketchup and mustard all over them, just to humiliate them. They drive them then in the back of a pickup truck through a car wash to clean them off. And, just like you go, what the fuck are these kids doing? But apparently all this, Barry, based on research I've done, is things that Richard Linklater, the director, said was stuff that happened to him in high school.
Yes, exactly, too. So this is what you're saying I like. So just to touch, you did mention the soundtrack, and then I gave some horrible singing from Foghat. But Jeff, apparently 1/6 of the budget of the film was actually spent on acquiring the rights to the music that you heard. So they paid more for the music than anybody who acted in the film, which I think is kind of interesting.
So let's go over real quick some of the songs that people would recognize that are in this film. Sweet Emotion by Aerosmith. We got Highway Star by Deep Purple. School's Out by Alice Cooper. Jim Dandy by Black Oak, Arkansas, which I believe is the first time we've ever referenced Black Oak, Arkansas on this show. Why Can't We Be Friends, which is by War. Stranglehold by Ted Nugent. No More Mr. Nice Guy by Alice Cooper. Free Ride by the Edgar Winter Group. Do You Feel Like We Do by Peter Frampton. Lowrider by War. And then let's see what else we got. I Just Want to Make Love to You. That's by Foghat. Love Hurts by Nazareth. Paranoid by Black Sabbath. Let's see. Tush by ZZ Top. Fox on the Run by Sweet. Slow Ride, as Barry tried to sing, by Foghat. Rock and Roll, Hoochie Coo, sung not by Gene Okerlund, but in fact by Rick Derringer. Holy shit, there's a lot of great songs in this movie, Barry.
Yeah, there is. It's a great soundtrack. And what I liked about this film too, and the way that it uses the soundtrack, is it's very smart. It's almost what Tarantino does. Is it sets a mood for the movie, and it puts you back. This film is supposedly, it's only supposed to be taking place over essentially 2 days. It's like 2 days in May of 1976, but the music immediately transports you back to that time. And I like it. But Jeff, I've got some facts here that you might find interesting.
Oh, please let us know.
Oh, you'll be Jeff. You always find these interesting. The character of Wooderson, which is Matthew McConaughey, was actually based on his older brother. So some of that creepy shit that you were just talking about, apparently the older brother was that guy. Matthew McConaughey was on Howard Stern. This is for the 15% that actually listened to Howard Stern maybe a month ago, and he talked a lot about this movie, and he talked a lot about his influences, and he had a very bizarre upbringing. His father was a wild man. They would beat each other up. The father would beat up the mother would attack the father would fight with the kids, but apparently they all loved each other. There was no animosity. They just were, this is the way that they were. But the older brother does sound like he was really interesting. Jeff, the word man is said here a lot. Now, to give you a little frame of reference, The Big Lebowski uses the word man 147 times. How many times do you think the word man is said in Dazed and Confused?
130.
203.
Wow.
Now, even better, how many times is the word, it's the F word, Jeff, the word fuck. How many times is that said in the movie?
Let's see. I'm going to go 194.
That's pretty good right there. 59 times.
Just a random guess there.
Yep. Since we were talking about Mila Jovovich, and let's be honest, boy, was she a knockout. And I think still is a knockout. She does, what's the franchise she does?
Resident Evil. That's
right. Beautiful woman. She's been married several times. She was married to the director. Who's the guy that did, what can't I think of his name? Anyway, she was married to a director much older than she was. But however, while
Paul
filming
Anderson.
No, was she married to Paul Anderson?
That's who I show that she's married to now. Paul W.S. Anderson.
Right, did Magnolia, which I think is a fantastic movie, and Boogie Nights.
Yeah.
Did a tremendous job. She was married to a guy, and I want to say he's got a foreign-sounding name. He was the guy that directed the was it Three Monkeys? What's the name of that movie?
Oh, yeah.
Bruce Willis and
Luke Besson.
Luc Besson. Thank you. That's it. She was married to him. But anyways, While filming this movie, Jeff, she and Shawn Andrews, who played Kevin Pickford, eloped to Las Vegas and got married. However, Jovovich was only 16 years old at the time.
Oh, my.
Oh, yeah. And her mother had the marriage annulled. She's been a wild child her entire life, which I love that. Apparently, this is one of Quentin Tarantino's favorite movies. I could certainly see why. This is ranked number 3 on Entertainment Weekly's 50 best high school movies of all time, ranked number 17 in Entertainment Weekly's top 50 cult films of all time.
So let me interrupt you. Do you know what number 1 and 2 were of the high school films? I'm guessing Fast Times at Ridgemont High maybe was number 1 or 2?
I don't, Jeff. I'm letting you down with my research because I don't remember.
God.
Exactly.
I should have stuck with McAdam. I should have stuck with McAdam. I knew it.
Right? There you go. Stick to wrestling, Jeff. Stick to something.
Then we could have that Flaherty on us again.
Best guest ever. And lastly, with Entertainment Weekly, they chose it as one of the 50 greatest independent films of all time. As I mentioned, the movie takes place on May 28th and 29th, 1976. Claire Danes, who we talked about earlier with the Terminator franchise, auditioned for the role of Sabrina, but was turned down by Richard Linklater because she's too classy to be in the film, which is funny. On Thursday, this is also to your point, on Thursday, October 7th, 2004, former high school classmates of Richard Linklater filed a lawsuit against Universal Studios saying that Linklater did not get their permission to use their likeness and surnames and now suffer from ridicule. Bullshit. The 3 men are Bobby Wooderson, Andy Slater, and Richard Pink Floyd. The 3 men still live in Huntsville, Texas, where, according to the lawsuit, we had fun in high school. The lawsuit was eventually dismissed due to the statute of limitations having expired. And lastly, Jeff, my last piece of trivia, Shawn Andrews, again, the guy who played Kevin Pickford and who wound up marrying.
His parents did not realize that he was getting ready to have a keg party at the house.
Yes, exactly. And he was the guy that was able to hook up with Mila Jovovich. So we'll always respect Shawn Andrews, whoever he is and whatever happened to him. But he and Jason London, Pink Floyd, they didn't get along during the filming. Richard Linklater actually had to break them up from having a fight at one point because they were actually having a physical confrontation. This wound up changing the ending as it was to feature Pickford instead of Wooderson. This also accounts for their virtual lack of dialogue between each other, despite being in each other's scenes quite a bit. So a little bit of interesting trivia there.
I will throw a little trivia your way.
What?
Wiley Wiggins, of course, played Mitch, the young 9th grader who ended up hooking up with the 10th grader. But there is a scene in the movie where he is being stalked by the upperclassmen who want to beat him with the paddle, led by Ben Affleck's O'Banion. But in that particular scene where the catcher comes out, okay, we need one more strike and then we win the game. And then he's going, oh, yeah, and then I get my ass beaten. So in the scene, he plays the starting pitcher and he goes to throw the strike. Well, apparently, Wiley Wiggins could not throw a baseball to save his life. And the image of him throwing a baseball was so completely unrealistic that they had to cut away. As he starts to go into his windup, they cut away from Wiley Wiggins, and you see the pitch going into the catcher's mitt. And they did that because Wiley Wiggins couldn't throw a baseball. Did you know that?
Well, Jeff, I did know that. To add on to your trivia, Wiley Wiggins got the job because he claimed to be a great baseball player. And he lied to get the job. And when push came to shove, what you just said is correct. He couldn't do shit when it came to baseball. So that's an excellent piece of trivia.
Better tick of Wiley Wiggins' character, and I don't know if this was Wiley Wiggins or the character, was it him taking the hair and pushing it behind his ear, because he does that at least 30 times in a movie, right? Or is it him grabbing the top of his nose, which is another thing he does like at least 30 times seemingly in the movie?
Yeah, and I don't think I've ever actually picked up on that.
Yes.
Are these legitimate tics, or are these?
No, that's what I'm saying. I don't know if it's something that they did. Oh, have your character do this, or if it's something
Right.
that Wiley Wiggins did as part of the part of the role in the movie, or something he does. I don't know. But next time you watch the movie, look out for those things. Brushing the hair behind the ear, he does that constantly, and he also grab like when you got a migraine and you're grabbing the top of your nose. That's what he does also throughout the movie.
Wow. No, I will. I'm actually going to watch this movie then later tonight, just so I can figure that out.
I will await your text when you go, son of a bitch, you're right again. So what else? Yeah, so a movie that there's so many. Oh, okay, here's something when I talked about nuances that I realize. So do you recall the scene where Parker Posey is in a car with Joey Lauren Adams and with the other girl, I think her name was Siobhan. I'm not sure what the actress's name is, but they're talking about, oh, you won't believe what she said about you. She goes, well, what'd she say about it? Well, I can't tell you because it's going to cause an argument. No, go ahead and say it. No, I don't want to say it because it's going to cause an argument. No, go ahead. You can tell us. We won't say anything. Well, she said, you're a bitch and you're a whore. Well, apparently that particular dialogue was being said. The person that apparently said that was Mitch's sister, who, as you know, has a scene where she goes out into the woods with Randall Pink Floyd. And he says, there's no kegs out here. And the girl proceeds to make out with her. Well, there's a scene at some point during the movie before they go to the kegger where Joey Adams' character is walking into the Emporium, and Randall Pink Floyd is standing there with Mitch's sister, and she gives him a dirty look, and he kind of like rolls his eyes like, I've been busted, And that's just another thing. I was like, wow, I never fucking noticed that. I've seen this movie 25 fucking times. I could never figure out who they were talking about in the car, and they're talking about Mitch's sister in the car.
Wow. No, I don't think I knew that either.
There you go.
Yeah.
So also great character, Slater, the guy that has the pot for everybody. Later Slater, that's his like his big thing. So another question I want to ask myself, Barry, because there are so many people in this movie that, because I would have been in high school at this point, during a time in 1976, I was in high school. Do you know, or do you recognize from all these different characters somebody that you went to high school with? Like are you like, not necessarily Wooderson or Mitch or Pink Floyd, but somebody that you went, oh yeah, that guy could have been my Randall Pink Floyd or something like that?
I think so. I think the one thing about this movie that really stands out is that a lot of these characters are they're not overly exaggerated. They're not cartoonish, and these could have been kids that you went to school with. So yeah. I think when I watch this, I think I relate in a lot of ways. Other than the paddling shit, which that I wouldn't have tolerated.
Yeah, it's very bizarre. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a little bizarre to me. But
so, is there a character that you could see as, yeah, that was me in high school?
I don't think it's just one. I'm kind of an amalgamation, Jeff, of maybe several of these characters.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't think there's one.
I would say I would be closest to the character of Tony.
Okay.
The guy that's in the car with the redheaded girl and with the guy. What's the actor's name? He looks like Seinfeld. He could look like Jerry
Adam Goldberg.
Yeah, Adam Goldberg. Yeah. So the guy that with the glasses and the longer blonde hair, that guy, the character of that guy strikes me as being very similar to what I was like in high school. So what characters? Not all of them, but just give me a couple of the characters that you think that would part of you is like them.
I think Pink Floyd, to some degree,
John McAdam claims he was Randall Pink Floyd.
Well, of course he does. Of course he does.
Nashua High School.
Right, but only part of it. I think Wiley Wiggins. I think that character. I think he and the Adam Goldberg characters you just said. There's just several. Like you see certain little things and you go, "Fuck, I was like that." And,
Yeah.
I like that. I have to give that.
I knew a guy. I was not the guy, but I knew a guy who was very much like the character of Don, who was played by Sasha Jensen.
Yes.
Who was the guy? Because I remember when I was in high school, the whole overalls with the they called them polo shirts back then. It wasn't like the polo logo, but they had like the stripes going across your chest and stuff like that. That he hasn't. I'm like, oh my God! I knew so many guys in high school that wore the overalls with those shirts, with the collared shirts. That was like the big look in like 76 and 77. So yeah, when I saw that, I was like, fuck, I knew a bunch of guys that dressed like that and had that kind of, football player, yeah, that chick likes you, so you got to basically treat her like shit because otherwise they're not going to respect you. So anyway, yeah, definitely Dazed and Confused gets a huge thumbs up recommendation. Hell, the movie could be total garbage and just watch it for the soundtrack, Barry. But a fun movie, and it definitely takes you back to a time, 75, 76, when, the music and like what kids were like in school. And I don't know if high school's like this anymore, Barry.
No, I don't think you can get away with any of this shit anymore, and it's a little bit crazy. But this was a fun movie. I think this might have been a relative, Jeff. This might have been Kelly McNally Morrison that actually recommended.
Okay, well, we'll give her a shout out and a special.
I think it was her.
Okay,
yeah, for some reason, I think it was her. But it's a great choice, and this is a movie. You know what I always relate this movie with? The movie Office Space. And I've seen Office Space 8,000 times. Whenever it's on, I watch it. I know Dazed and Confused is kind of like that for me. Whenever it's on, if I see it, I'm watching it.
Okay. So now as we begin to wrap up this jam-packed episode, 2 quick little notes that I want to throw your way, Barry. First of all, for those of you that have been with us for all, 165 episodes, will recall on an Unsolved Mysteries episode, I can't remember, Barry, if it was you or me that brought up this story, the story of the disappearance of the sisters Catherine and Sheila Lyon, who were 2 girls who were, I want to say ballpark, 10 and 8 years old, who were at a mall in Maryland and who were abducted, disappeared, and were basically never seen again. And it happened in 1975. So good Lord, it's been 45 years. And so my wife is a big true crime aficionado. Shout out to our boy, Ian Totten, who likes that kind of stuff too. But I will tell you, there is a channel on our cable system, and Barry said, I believe that you had heard of it. It's called the ID channel. And the ID channel features a lot of true crime stuff. And lo and behold, my wife says, they do a show called like New at 9 or something like that, where it's new episodes of different mysteries that they're looking into or unsolved stuff, whether it's missing persons, murders, whatever. And she goes, go ahead and tape the shows Saturday and Sunday night for me because I want to see them at some point. Well, lo and behold, the episode on Saturday night focused on the disappearance of the Lyon sisters. And I'm like, holy shit, Barry and I completely talked about this one. So it was a 2-hour episode. I don't know if they repeat these or not. If you have access to the ID channel, it is a absolutely spellbinding episode as they look into the disappearance of these girls. And without getting into the grisly details, basically the murder mystery is solved by someone who comes forward, who is a sexual predator, who was in prison at the time when they were, this mystery was unsolved for the better part of over 35 years. They were getting ready to close the case as just unsolvable. And what happened was, a detective, as he was closing one of the boxes, saw basically a loose piece of paper where it was whenever, Barry, you have some sort of big crime that's making all the papers or it's on all the TV shows, you always get the idiots that come forward and say, oh yeah, I did it, or I know what happened here. And then, they take a lie detector test and they flunk it and the police are like, get the hell out of here. And so what happened was they had this guy who came forward who gave a confession that at the time was declared false, who had said, I saw them being led away from the mall by a guy who had a limp. Okay, well, the cop looks at this and goes, wait a minute, why have I never seen this? So they go and reach out to this guy who, shockingly, is in prison, but in Delaware. And they start basically going down a rabbit hole with this guy because, as I told Barry before we started recording, the police in this case are saying when you're interviewing someone who is a predator, a serial killer, someone who's known to be a habitual liar, what you have to do is you have to weed out the 85% of the stuff that's bullshit that he's telling you, but they always, to keep you on the hook a little bit, they'll throw out 10 or 15% of truth. And you have to figure out the stuff they're telling you that's the truth and the stuff they're telling you that is false. And basically that's what happens. And over the course of like a couple of years, they weed out the truth as to what's happened to these girls. And it was completely horrifying. And unfortunately, it was not a happy ending. They did not find the girls alive. The girls are, one of them is definitely deceased. The other one is believed to be deceased. But it's a fascinating episode of television on the ID channels. I think it's called Who Killed the Lyon Sisters or What Happened to the Lyon Sisters, Lyon. Strong recommendation. Barry, I remember you telling me when we talked about it off air that you remember discussing this case.
Yeah, and I this might have been the first Unsolved Mysteries that we did, because it's going back a ways, but I do remember it, and it's a tragic case, and as you said to me when we were talking, is that the same people that committed these are walking the earth, maybe not. Yeah. That's frightening. That's
completely horrifying. So now to wrap up the show, got a quick little question for Barry, based on something that popped up on the radio the other day. And I was telling my wife the story, and this is very much a self-deprecating story, I will tell you, first of all, when I reveal to you the answer to the question I'm about to pose to you. So, Barry, let's say you're in high school, okay? And you graduated, like about 81, 82?
That's correct, sir. Yes.
Okay. Well, I say graduated. I guess I'm assuming something there. So let's say your sophomore, junior year in high school, you're taking an English class, and the teacher decides, instead of going over this poetry part of the textbook that we're supposed to do, I'm going to throw you a curveball. I'm going to have each of the students in this class pick out a song, but what you have to do is you have to pick out the song and show it in the form of a poem. Okay, like, for example, I'm just going to pull one out of my hat. Eleanor Rigby, okay, by the Beatles. Okay, you could, if you look at the lyrics of that song, you could very well easily see how it could be construed as a poem, okay? So take a song, you have to print the lyrics out, and then you have to show different things like a corollary, different, terms that are used in poetry, symbolism, this sort of thing. So you're going to want to use an example of that. And I'll give you an example. Another kid in the class did the song "Stairway to Heaven" by Zeppelin, okay, which of course very, very much has a lot of symbolism and things like that. So if I was to ask a young Barry Rose, and judging by the music that you're into, not now as old fart Barry Rose, but as 15 or 16-year-old Barry Rose, tell me a song you think you might have chosen.
Oh, and this is a tough one, Jeff. So there is a song that immediately comes to mind. I wonder if it would have been something by Van Halen. Let's see. I'm your ice cream man. Stop me when. Now that doesn't seem to work, right? So it's probably going to be. I think this is the easy one too. The Hotel California.
Very good.
I think Hotel. Yeah,
absolutely. Very good choice. With symbolism and different things like that. And so, I recall I was telling my wife that the girl that sits next to me, she picked the song by Al Stewart called "Year of the Cat." Okay, yeah. Which a pop song, great but there's song. Lots of symbolism in it. Like he makes reference to something like watercolor in the rain, which is a great use of symbolism. Okay, so I said, what song did I pick out? 15-year-old Jeff Bowdren, before I became the booker. I was an AM radio guy, Barry. I hadn't even fucking discovered FM. Okay, so did I pick out Beatles, Rolling Stones, Bowie, Springsteen? I fucking picked out Weekend in New England by Barry Manilow. Thank you. Wow. You can begin humiliating me now, because I know I got a C- on it, by the way, Barry. Just a horrible, horrible selection of song choice. I have no fucking idea where I picked a Barry Manilow song. It was like the big top 40 song or something, because I was very much a Casey Kasem, America's Top 40 guy even then. So I wasn't going for the deep album cut. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's a Barry Manilow too.
However, did not dress in his wardrobe like the guy.
There you go. Yeah, that's but in your defense, while I'm not necessarily a Barry Manilow fan.
Oh, you've got Copacabana on your playlist, don't worry.
But I could see if you were trying to fulfill the requirements of this, that song actually hits on every level. So, I mean, how can you fault him? I can't
say the boys were extremely scornful of my selection. The girls in the class liked the pick.
Right.
So, if you're all about appealing to the girls, I did okay, So,
well, to that end, Jeff, and I think I've told the story before. I used to ride the bus, so this would have made I would have been 14 or 15 years old.
Short bus? Was it the short bus?
It should have been, but I was lucky enough. But there was a girl on that bus, and her first name was Jackie, and she was kind of a hippie and into Jackson Browne. I had never heard a Jackson Browne song in my life. I went and bought every Jackson Browne album. I memorized every word so I could impress her when I talked to her on the bus. And let me say, nothing ever came of it. And I still have a crush on her. Of course, this is a memory of 40-something years ago. But Jackson Browne's another one that would have fit really into that whole scope of poetry.
Absolutely. And I know you're not a huge Jackson Browne fan. I think you've told me that at least once. But tell me your favorite all-time, and we're wrapping up, your favorite all-time Jackson Browne song. Go.
I mean, Running on Empty is
Great
one.
song.
Well, yeah, he had a hit, and I forget what that girl could sing.
Yes, good song.
That was the song that that girl could sing was, I think, my favorite Jackson Browne song.
He also had from Fast Times at Ridgemont High, Somebody's Baby. That's did right. Boulevard, which is a good song. However, my favorite,
Boulevard was great.
Favorite Jackson Browne song of all time, unquestionably, The Pretender. Loved that song. So, and anyway, on that note, for the second time in this very episode, I will say that Breaking Kayfabe with Bowdren Barry, a production of the Arcadian Vanguard Podcast Network. Lou, you don't need to come out on the backside and do the audio for us. We got it taken care of, buddy. So until next week, for my man Barry Rose and for our producer, as I just mentioned, the sweet man, Lou Kipilman, we will talk to you next week, folks. Very fucking forward.